It's a real pleasure for me to be speaking to Professor June Purvis, who's Professor Emerita of Women's and Gender History at the University of Portsmouth, and also, I'm delighted to say, a member of our congregation here at the Cathedral for this
Hello.
International Women's Day. Hello, June.
Hello.
And the theme of the day this year is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. How far do you think we've come on women's equality, and what do you think the implications of the pandemic are going to be for it?
If you take that general question, first of all, you will find that women are still not equal in many spheres of life. For example, I've just been looking at the statistics on QCs. Only about 13% of women are QCs. Vice chancellors, the sector I'm in, about 17%. And if you look at women academics, which I am, we make up 45% of the workforce, but only 23% of the professoriate. Pay gap is still there between men and women, about 14%. And I think one of the most disturbing statistics is the violence against women. About 2 women a week are killed by a partner or ex-partner. So generally we have a long way to go. Yeah. But in regard to the pandemic, the situation for women has deteriorated remarkably. Particularly, I think, for mothers. So if you look at the childcare situation, formal networks like nurseries and other people who took in small children, they have often been denied the right to do that unless they were the children of key workers. And then the informal networks, particularly relatives, grandparents, friends, etc., who used to look after kiddies, they haven't been able to. So that has been quite disastrous for women, and it's highlighted really existing inequalities. And then, of course, with schools being closed at the moment, that has been very difficult. I have a colleague at work who said it's really grim because she has a full-time job and 2 primary age children, and she has to do the homeschooling. There's quite a few statistics to show that more women than men do this. So the burdens have been increased for women under COVID. And as they're often focused in the low-paid part-time sector, many more of them are prone to redundancy, etc. And another statistic I just dug out this morning was that mothers in the workplace in particular, 47%, that's very high, 47% were more likely to lose their jobs than fathers. So a lot of people across the whole range of the press, the Tory press, the more left-wing press, make this point really that it's like women going back into the 1950s, that they've been forced much more into a home worker role than to be an employee. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And also a lot of criticism of this present government that it's considered very blokey. To borrow a phrase by a Tory woman, I think it was Amber Rudd actually who said that because there are so few women in the cabinet, 3/4 of the cabinet are men. A lot of the issues that women deal with every day aren't brought up. So I think there's a lot to be done.
And I know a major area of your research has been the suffragette movement, which is a cause very close to your heart.
Yes.
Is that a struggle that belongs to a bygone era, or do you think it has resonances for us now?
No. I mean, I'm just wearing the suffragette colours today. Can you see? Because they are now used by International Women's Day. So it's purple for dignity, white for purity, and green for hope. And I just brought in an old, can you see that? That's a genuine Votes for Women sash that one would have used if one was in the movement at that time. I think the point I want to stress about the suffragette movement is it wasn't a single issue campaign just for the parliamentary vote for women. They wanted equality for women in all walks of life, in law, in family, in employment, in public life. So once you understand that about the suffragette movement, I think you can see how relevant it is for today.
Right. Yes.
And what I've done in my research is to challenge the dominant narratives about it, which have unfortunately have mainly been written by men, male historians before the 1970s. They really couldn't understand why these women took to protest. Why did they go to prison for something as little as a vote? Why did they go on hunger strike and be forcibly fed? And you've got to read the accounts of the women themselves, who felt very much as though they were secondary citizens, and that the denial of the parliamentary vote was the key thing that signified their secondary status. So that's what I've been doing, along with other scholars. We're all trying to reinterpret the old narratives about the suffragettes being deviant, misguided women who were suffering from menopausal symptoms or whatever. You know, all the old arguments that are trotted out.
It's incredible to hear them now, actually. It's just, yeah. Gosh, and among your many other roles, you edit a journal, the Women's History Review.
Yes.
What do you focus on in that, and who writes for you?
Well, it's quite interesting. First of all, I founded a journal called Gender and Education, and then I got a bit bored with that, and I'd moved into the suffrage movement. So I founded this one. And what's interesting is that we get articles from all over the world, mainly academics, I would say. We cover a wide range of topics, as you can imagine, but we also have a viewpoint section, which I'm very keen to promote. And that is where people can write about their own personal experiences. So recently we did publish an article about a young woman academic who had one child. She was expecting her second one in 2 weeks. And I said to her, can you write me something about being a mother and an academic under COVID? She said, I will. So, and she produced this, you know, and then had the baby afterwards. So it was really remarkable. So I quite like the viewpoint section, which is much more related to women's experiences of life, although it needn't be that topic, but it's often a controversial topic that we publish.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that I try to make them free access if the publisher will agree. And that had over 3,000 hits in about 4 weeks because it went internationally, and a lot of women in higher education were experiencing those sorts of dilemmas between balancing research, teaching, and looking after small children.
Yeah, so it really struck a chord for people internationally. Yeah, that's so interesting. And you're just starting to write a new book.
Yeah, I'm supposed to have been started on this, 2 years ago. I'm always behind with my deadlines. I'm a publisher's nightmare from that point of view. But I get them out in the end. And I'm just editing a collection of Emmeline Pankhurst's letters, you see. And it's really fascinating to do because you always see her as an activist, and she always claimed, I'm hopeless with a pen. I can't write, even though she was a wonderful speaker.
Yeah.
And reading these letters, you realize how warm she was and how affectionate towards fellow suffragettes who were being forcibly fed. She never was. She went on hunger strike, thirst strike, and sleep strike, which played havoc with her body. But she was never forcibly fed.
Yeah, and letters do just give you an insight, I suppose.
Oh, it's a different world if you read letters. Men tend not to do this, you see, male historians, but we women tend to, well, particularly feminist historians like me, we tend to delve into a different world of women's experiences and things like that, if we can find the source.
Yeah.
And it's quite a worry now because we're all using email and we all delete them after a bit. And
Yes.
what are historians going to use in the future?
Where are the archives?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Gosh, yes, that is a real issue, isn't it? But
Yeah.
yeah, for now, lovely to look back on letters.
Yeah.
Well, we're so delighted to have you in our congregation, June. I was just wondering if I could cheekily ask, what are the best things about Portsmouth Cathedral for you?
Well, I was brought up in a Christian family, and I've always gone to church on and off, mainly Scottish Free Church I was brought up in, and then I went to Methodist, and then I felt I wanted to go to the Church of England, and my husband took ill with irregular heartbeat one day, and I remember going into the cathedral at Portsmouth, and I found it very, very daunting because I didn't know the ritual of when you were to stand up, sit down, what you were to do when you took the wafer and the wine, etc. And Nick Ash, the former presenter, was there then, and he was always very kind to me. And he said, "Don't worry about it. I'll show you what to do." So that's how I got involved. And I found a lovely community of people who were very supportive of each other. And I think that's been very, very important for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's lovely to hear. June, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us. It's been really good to speak to you.
Thank you for asking me. Bye.